So I'm gonna be honest with you, I kind of hate this eye look. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Beth, and I love a cool toned eyeshadow palette. And I also happen to love these little 9-pan palettes that ABH releases from time to time. So when I saw them advertise this new Haze eyeshadow palette, which of course already has my fingerprints on it, for sale in the TikTok shop, then I jumped on it very quickly. So I have already applied this to my eyelids. And as I said, I do tend to like these little palettes. They are, I think, a pretty good value for, I think, $32, getting 9 shadows and this nice little plastic compact. This palette, though, I thought was really interesting because it did remind me an awful lot of the Ethereal Eyes Moonlight palette that Mario released maybe last year now. So I wanted to do another comparison. I did upload recently a comparison between the ABH Embers palette right here next to the Master palette by Mario. So this is an ABH palette that they released in collaboration with Mario almost 10 years ago now, in 2016. So this is basically the 2025 re-release of this palette. So if you want to check that out, I did also compare the Ethereal Eyes Nature palette to the Embers palette, which, as I said, is just a recreation of the original Master palette by Mario. So I'll link those videos for you if you are curious. But spoiler alert, I don't think this is a bad palette to purchase. I think for what it is, it's a fairly standard or old-fashioned kind of metallic and matte palette. So I don't think this one was a bad release. It is kind of repetitive for the brand, but in any case, I don't think it's a waste of money. This palette, though, I'm a little bit more on the fence about. I'll just tell you right now that I have already filmed the demo of this palette, so I have applied this to the eyelids. I haven't done the comparison swatches yet, so we'll see what I think after I do that. But at the time of filming, I don't know that I would necessarily recommend this palette. Of course, the Moonlight palette was limited edition, so there's that. But I don't know that you necessarily need to rush out to purchase this. So with that out of the way in terms of an introduction, I guess I'll show you the demo portion first because that's the first thing I filmed, and then I'll do the swatches. I'm filming this all out of order, so hopefully everything makes sense when I stitch it together, but I did just want to kind of give you an initial introduction to this palette. So with all that being said, let's get into the demo. All right, so let's crack into this little guy here. So I already have my fingerprints on it, of course, but their standard kind of 9-pan component here. So we have a little piece of plastic over the shadows, and then I'm going to remove the cover on the mirror, which comes off easily enough. So I haven't primed my eyelids yet, so I'm going to do that with the Hourglass Veil Eye Primer. So just squeeze a bit on the back of my hand. I guess I could have used ABH's eyeshadow primer. I know they make one, and I do have it, but I've been using this one lately, so I'm kind of, I guess, familiar with how it performs. Sometimes I miss having one with a doe foot as opposed to a squeezy tube, but anyway. So fortunately, this has the kind of creamy matte color that I like to set my eyelids with. So I'm going to take a Sigma Large Fluff E50 and pop into that shade like so. If a palette doesn't have a shade like this, I'll often just use a face powder, but when it does, I think it's nice to use a shadow. So I don't really have an eye look in mind here, but I might lean into the blues a little bit. You could certainly do a more kind of daytime look with this palette. But I'm going to start off with that shade in the corner with my Sonia G Classic Crease. Just to start to create the dimension and shape. And I do go a little bit above my actual crease, so it's kind of the socket of my eye. So that is still visible when I'm looking at you directly, because otherwise with hooded lids, things get a little lost. I find that it does help your eyes look bigger if you have that shadow a little bit above and all of that. So going into that shade there with a mini booster. So far, these are pretty blendable and buildable, so nothing crazy. If you kind of stayed with these lighter mattes, I think you could definitely use this as a daytime palette. And I am kind of going in with a light hand to start with. So once that's where I want it, I'm going to take that classic crease again in that first crease shade here, and just kind of go over that to blend. All right, so let's go into, I'm not sure if this is actually a matte. It might be a little bit more of a shimmer. Let's see what the shade descriptions say. Sometimes I film the demo after the swatches. I think that's usually my preference, but it doesn't always work out that way. So it says it's a matte midnight blue with sparkling reflex. In my book, a matte with sparkling reflex isn't really a matte, but we'll go into that blue shade, and again, kind of looking straight ahead and placing the shadow kind of in this V shape. Again, these aren't like super overpowering shadows, which I think for like a travel everyday palette, I usually prefer. But if you are like a pigment queen or whatever, then these might not give you enough. All right, so I'm gonna take my classic crease again. And I do have my Sigma switch here to kind of wipe off the shadow. I'm gonna go back into that kind of medium brown and take that a little bit more all over to get a little bit more of a diffused blend. Okay, I think that's kind of a good starting place. So let's go into the kind of fun shimmer and metallic shades. I'm going to take a Rephr 28 and go into that bottom shade there. This is a dry brush. Obviously, I'm doing my eyes first here. So this is kind of a duochrome shade here. I have to say, it does start to read a little bit more burgundy on the lids. So you have to be really careful with a shade like this, otherwise you end up with like a bruised look very quickly. All right, so just stick that kind of the outer half. And then I'll just flip my brush over. Might just give it a quick wipe, but using the other side of the brush, going into that center shade. And this is, I think, a much kind of nicer shade on the lid. All right, so just kind of sticking with that kind kind of for the rest of it. And I'm going to take that lightest kind of white shade. I'm going to try that on my finger. So put some in the center, the lid. And then also, this is my Refer 26 brush. And going into that same kind of white shade and applying that to the center. So I'm gonna be honest with you, I kind of hate this eye look. I think because that shade here, the duochrome, I think because it pulls so red on the eye, even though, I don't know, maybe if I try to build it up, more of the blue will come through. A little bit, but still, I think having that red and blue, it's just giving bruise. So I am actually going to remove this eye look, which is not something I tend to do. So with that in mind, I guess 2 shades out of the palette are not really usable to me. So I'm just gonna take some micellar water. So I'll remove that and see if I like a more neutral look. So it's handy that I did my eyes first. So just taking a damp makeup eraser and removing anything left over. So to rehydrate the eye area, I'm going to use the Dew Oracle Reviving Eye Gel. They sent me this in PR, but I have enjoyed it as kind of a makeup prep step. It's a very thin product, and you're meant to pair this with their eye masks. You don't have to. So I'll give that a second to sink in. And while I'm doing that, I also got in the mail today the Experiment software update, which is a really cute name. So this is the extension of their lip balm that I talked about in my Sephora recommendations video. And I did pay for this myself, by the way. This wasn't PR. But you get 4 lip balms. This is just a piece of packaging. But yeah, 4 lip balms. So you have the original 0, which is clear, and then you have a bite shade, a null shade, and a void shade, which I think is kind of cute. So I'm going to go in with null, which I think is kind of a pink shade. So it's not a ton of color, but I think it's nice. And I think once I do have foundation on and the kind of natural redness in my skin is canceled out a bit, then it'll look a little bit kind of present in terms of a lip color. All right, so let's prime my lids. All right, so I'm going to start out the same way. I'm going to apply this cream shade with my Sigma Large Fluff. And then taking the lightest shade there. And then the next one up here, just using the same classic crease brush. Again, keeping this a little bit more on the neutral side. And half the time I go in with a mini booster is because I'm not sure how pigmented one of these shades might be, so I want to kind of control it a little bit. I'm going to take that first shade again, just focus a little bit more on the top, just to blend. Okay, so I'll stop there, and then I'm going to take another clean rougher. Good thing I have multiples of these. And then just going into that center shade, this kind of taupey metallic, and just apply all over. And just kind of blending up into the crease. I mean, this is a fairly light shimmer. So if you have a deeper skin tone, it's probably going to be a little bit more of a light wash. And then going into that top shade. So I'm basically kind of following the same thing, just omitting that blue and kind of duochrome. So it's pretty. I don't think this is anything super groundbreaking or unique. So using that white shade again. Depending on how often you like to do all matte looks, you might find the looks that you get out of this palette to be kind of limiting. So I'll probably have kind of more definite thoughts after I do the swatches and everything. But for me, I will say right off the bat that I think these shades are lacking a little bit in the pigment department. And for a smoky palette, which is what I think this seems to want to be, you expect a little bit more kind of payoff and impact. So I think maybe if we had like a darker brown or a black even, and I'm not usually one to say that I like black in a palette, or even just a more pigmented blue, I think that would have done a lot more. That shade right there was a total dud for me personally. I think if we had a shade like that that was true to that color that you see in the pan, that could have been really beautiful. But I just don't think, I don't think this is the best example of this palette, unfortunately. And I was very excited when I first saw this being advertised. But as I'll probably show you, I have like the Mini Sultry palette. This one right here. This was one of the first ones that they did. And I think it's still available. So that's Mini Sultry. So I would argue that if you do want a smoky palette, this one has a little bit more warmth to it. But I think formula-wise, you might be happier with this one. Of course, you can kind of combine palettes if you wanted to travel with multiple of these. They're not too large or anything. But yeah, I think this could have been a lot better, unfortunately. So let's get into the swatches. All right, so let's take a closer look at this Haze palette before we do some comparison swatches with the Mario palette. So as I said, this retails for $32. You do get free shipping through the TikTok shop where this is exclusively sold at the moment. And to look at the manufacturing, this is made in the US and it has a 12-month shelf life. And each shadow is a little bit under a gram. So they say that this palette contains 9 full pigment shades ranging from earth-toned neutrals to hazy hues in matte and metallic finishes. This essential mini eyeshadow collection features ABH's highly pigmented, easy-to-blend formula and offers a versatile color range for creating everything from soft daytime to dramatic night looks. We only have numbers basically for these shades, so A1, A2, A3, B1, B2, B3, C1, C2, C3. So A1 is a matte creamy nude, like so. I'll go ahead and do these by row because I don't think swatching these by finish really adds a whole lot. So A2, Celestial Diamond with Sparkling Reflex, like so. And A3 is a matte grayish taupe. So that is the first row there. And I'm going to try, yeah, I do end up picking up a little bit more than I need sometimes, so. That is the first row. And then the second row, we have B1 is a matte muted dusk. B2 is a metallic satin taupe, which was the name of a very popular MAC shade back in the day. And B3 is a matte mauve brown. So that is the second row there. So far very pretty, but as I said, like that shade and that shade have kind of a similar tone, a little bit more cool toned. And then going into this last row here, we have C1 is a matte earthy fawn. C2 is a duochrome reddish brown with a bluish green shift. So as you saw in the demo, that one didn't maintain a lot. And this feels very dry, this particular shade. I mean, it looks impactful in the swatch, but when you end up blending it out, as you can see. So maybe you could build it up, but like that one, especially when you kind of blend it, it just ends up super red. So I'll give you a close look at those swatches. And I'm trying to wipe the shadow off with a damp makeup eraser. I might have to go wash my hands. Yeah, and it's still, even after washing. So I did get these shades a little wet. I don't think any soap got on them, but I might just go over this one maybe. And this one. Just so they're not distorted anyway. I'm going to take, I think, some micellar water. Okay, so I think that got most of the blue off. And just wiping those fingers again so that they're dry. Okay, so let's go into this Mario Moonlight Ethereal Eyes Moonlight palette. Okay, but obviously we are going to swatch this blue, which is also pretty pigmented. A little bit more of a cool toned blue. This one is a little bit more turquoise. I don't think we have that kind of duochrome, so I might swatch this one, which I think is honestly a better shade because it doesn't go red. There's that. And again, getting as much of that blue shadow off my fingers as I can. Let's stick with the metallics for now. So I'm going to swatch, obviously, the white. And this does feel a little bit thinner. It has a little bit more of a blue reflect to it as well, which I think you can see there. And then for the other one, I think it's going to be mostly that shade will be the closest. And again, this is another kind of thin shade, so it's not quite the same. I mean, it's close. This one is maybe a tad bit darker, more kind of metallic, a little bit more beige. That one's a little bit more gold, maybe. All right, so again, trying to get all that off. This matte shade, I think, is going to be the closest, obviously. So a cream matte shade, fairly close. And then these other mattes. So we don't really have a true gray or a black in the ABH. And of course, this is a 12-pan palette, so we do have 3 additional shades. So I think I'll do this one is kind of the mauve shade, which is, again, pretty close. There's a slight tone difference. We have these other 2 brown shades. So I'm gonna go with this one and that one right there. That's it's kind of a muckier color in the Mario. That one's a little bit more kind of neutral. That one has a little bit more green in it, I think. And then we have this one, which is a darker brown. I'll do this one like right here. So again, a darker brown shade. So as far as what I didn't swatch the gray, the black, or those two shades. So that's 4. So I'll do that again so you can see what the, I guess, Mario offered that the ABH didn't. So I'll do these 2 first. Really pretty shades. Like so. And then I'm gonna have to, I think, swatch the 2 remaining mattes on the ABH side, just for space, but that's a gray and a black. So those are the ABH Haze shades. These are all Mario Moonlight shades, and then these 2 down here. So let me get these out of the way because they can kind of throw off the lighting. So let me give you a close look at those. And that is everything at a glance. So I hope you guys found that interesting or helpful. I'd say if you do have the Mario palette from last year, I don't think you need to rush out to buy the ABH. But as I said, I do still think these are pretty good value for what you get. So I just wanted to kind of compare these for you. And I think these are all still available on the ABH website. So I think they might have said that these are limited, but it seems like they've kind of stuck around for a while. So I guess kind of the magnets are sticking together. All right, so I think we're up to 6 as far as what's in the, or what has been released into the US. These are kind of repelling each other. So we have the Haze palette, the Embers palette, which I compared to the original ABH and Mario palette, and this year's Ethereal Eyes Nature palette. We have Sultry, which I said was maybe a better cool tone option. Modern Renaissance, Spice, and Sugar, which I think came out last year. So I think the other ones might be worth looking at if I don't dig into them with my nails. And in case you really liked this kind of blue color story, I did want to, I guess, point you in the direction of 2 Vizier palettes. So this one was the Cyranouse Étendue, which came out last year, maybe. So I do have a review or look with that palette. And then they also released the Paris Nuit Étoilée, I think earlier this year. So that one, again, has some of those blue tones. This one also has some purple, but I think you'll probably be able to get some similar looks out of these palettes, and I think the quality is maybe a tad bit better. So Vizier also has the advantage of having these kind of removable pans so that you could really customize your perfect palette if you were so inclined. So they just lift out like so. But yeah, let me know if you guys have any specific comparison requests, and I'll try to put those up on Instagram or on my community page on YouTube. All right, so I think that is it for the swatches. So just as a final bookend to this video, and again, I'm filming this before I film the swatches, so you know, I may have additional thoughts as I do that. But I will say that I think this is a pretty look. I think if you are deeper than I am, I don't know how much depth you'll really be able to get out of this palette. So again, you may want to kind of think about that. I also don't think I'm going to get very many kind of distinct looks out of this palette. Like if I'm eliminating those 2 on the bottom, the blue shades from what I reach for, it doesn't give me a lot of kind of very distinct shades in terms of depth to work with. I think these shades are kind of similar to these ones Just a different tone maybe, but I do definitely prefer these kind of cooler toned ones. So for $32, if you are going to purchase this, I would say definitely purchase it on sale somewhere. They did release it on the TikTok shop exclusively, but I don't know if it will eventually come to other retailers like Ulta, for example. I wouldn't be surprised if it did because they have done that in the past. So maybe just wait for that. I know they do offer free shipping through the TikTok shop, but I still don't think it's like a run, don't walk situation. I think maybe it's a more meander, have a look at it, pause for a while and then come back later sort of situations. So yeah, the shades I used are pretty. You probably have other shades in your collection that are very similar. I think that Icy White did give me a bit of fallout. It does have kind of a pretty frosty, scattered light kind of look to it, but I think maybe a Moondust shade will be a little bit more refined. I'll just pull this one out from Urban Decay. This is Cosmic, just for a little bit of a comparison there. And I do also have, this is the Fenty Diamond Bomb and How Many Carats as a kind of similar, so that's even kind of more glossy, less base pigment. So yeah, it's pretty. I kind of collect these palettes at this point and I like to review them for you guys, but I don't think this is the best one they've ever done. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe. And until next time, I hope you guys are all doing well and staying safe, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.